Hello everybody, I'm Brendan Brown from CSIRO and I'm going to take you through a quick overview of where we're at with the RiskWi's decision process baseline. But before we get going, a very quick RiskWi's in a nutshell overview, at least in my opinion. And that's that RiskWi's is really about the journey, not just the destination. And what we mean by that is that you can split outcome and process and quality of decision 4 ways. And what we really want to look at in RiskWi's is how do we get it more right more often? And that means bringing a really good quality decision process to ensure that we get a good outcome. A good quality decision process doesn't always end up in the best outcome. You could have some bad luck, but we're doing our best to make sure that we're maximizing what we can do. What we don't want and what we want to get away from is a bad decision process that ends poorly, which is really you're getting your just rewards, or a good outcome that's just dumb luck. What we want is that bringing that decision quality up so that we can get good outcomes. And the baseline is really about trying to quantify and calculate how we do that and identify opportunities. Now, the obvious question is, what's a high quality decision? And Anne hasn't given me long enough to really go into this. And it's the same with our baseline. It really has to be done within 10 minutes and it has to be nationally applicable. These at their heart are all things that are universally considered good, a good part of decision making. And that's really what we look at through the baseline. So we've made some good progress on this. We've got about 800 respondents. They're across the nation, and about half the sample is on nitrogen and the other half on other decisions. The big push now is to expand out that WA portion because you're the biggest ARG, and to look at these different types of decisions that RiskWi's looks at as well. In terms of where we're at with Sterling to Coast farmers, there's only 15 samples and there's only been one collected in the last 2 years. That means that we can't really baseline at a group level. So we need to look at how we get some more data in, some more responses, so that we can actually create some content that's really only relevant at the Sterling to Coast level. So again, everything that I present for Sterling to Coast, we have to be a bit careful because it's a very small sample size. But what I've got here is the most difficult decisions that the 15 that have responded have told us about. So for the SCF region, you've got 6 decisions where more than half of your respondents have some level of difficulty, but really you've got the big 2 there in land purchase, leasing agreements, and buying major new machinery and infrastructure. So that might, for instance, help you think about what are the priorities for your group and what you do and what you get funded within RiskWi's and outside. What we've also got is a comparison of those difficulties with the rest of WA and the nation without. And you can see those top 4 of purchases of machinery, land, leasing, marketing of grain and nitrogen. They're consistent with the top 4 in all locations. There are some differences as you move down the list though. For instance, Sterling Coast farmers have less trouble with the input purchase timing than the rest of the nation, but finding much more difficulty in livestock decisions there. So some things to unpack. Now, I don't really have time to run through all of these results, but what we can see when we talk about the different elements is that there's a lot of room to move. Those green numbers are the percentage of growers that do it well, and the blue is the percentage of advisors that are doing well across those different elements of the decision process. But essentially, what this tells us is there's real room to move in improving decision process. Now, there's lots of stuff that we could actually do that helps us understand from RiskWi's, but also just how you as a group function as well. We can plot your group against WA and against the nation to understand what that means. So for instance, I've just created a WA versus national data set. And you can see things like WA farmers, that blue line on intuition versus calculation, are more intuitive thinkers, whilst the nation tends to be more calculating. So what does that mean to how you communicate with your growers? The same with the production versus profitability or lens of analysis. There's a skew for WA towards production rather than profitability, and that's a really narrowing of a lens of understanding. And even if you look at the review process, WA, there's a much higher proportion, nearly a quarter of growers have said that they don't do a review of their decision process. So it really starts to unpack what is the crux of decision making in particular locations. So if we can get some more data from you guys, we can plot that and start to help you understand how you're different from WA, from the nation, but also what that means to your programming in RiskWi and beyond. So there's some really cool things that we can do with this data as well, without going into the technicalities of these statistical processes. What we can do is break down the population into different clusters of ways of thinking. And in this case, we've got these fast thinkers, which are intuitive thinkers. We've got slow thinkers, which use tools. They've got a wide lens of analysis. They do a lot of calculation in their intuition. And we've actually got a third category that isn't naturally calculating or with a wide lens or with review, but tends to use advisors to help them with that. And if you break that down, you can actually see it's only about a third of growers nationally that are those slow thinkers. And it's about a quarter that are actually just very intuitive in how they go about things. So what that has huge implications on extension and how you reach growers and how you talk to growers. So these sorts of things that we can do with this data set as it expands. Now, just as a closer, this is this staged understanding of decision process. And what we can see is, again, in Sterling to Coast, 9 in 10 are probabilistic thinkers, but only around 1 in 5 meet that criteria of a really good, strong quality of decision process. So something to consider here is that RiskWi can really provide something to all of your growers and advisors in your region. We just need a bit more data to understand it, and then we can start to create things that are meaningful and help with that programming. Now, Anne had said to me that there might be this QR code on the table, so if you're in the room, you can do that. The other thing we have is we've got it sent up via Menti, so you can do an immersive baselining with people in the room where you see results as you go through and you generate that discussion as well. So we've got it in a normal survey form, but also in that interactive workshop Menti form to collect data with as well. Now, the final thing that I have absolutely no time to go through is that I'm rolling out in a little bit more detail a decision process framework to work through with growers in a workshop setting and advisors in a workshop setting. It basically goes through that idea that we're not robots and we don't just work on numbers, but our decision is a combination of numbers and what's in our head, our intuition and rules of thumb in our gut, how we see things through our eyes, what our heart really wants and what matters, and identity in the heart, and the practicalities of farming. So we're rolling that out. Now, if there's an interest at SCF to have a more in-depth discussion and understanding around decision-making processes, then I'd be happy to look at coming out to you guys and running a workshop at an existing event or standalone to build out that understanding and help growers really understand where weaknesses and strengths are in their decision process.